We want to thank our lead sponsor Starboard for supporting this season of the SUP FM podcast. For those who love adventure and exploration on the water, Starboard offers the perfect solution with their range of touring boards. Whether you choose the durable composite or the convenient inflatable options, Starboard's touring boards provide a superb blend of glide and stability, perfect for your next expedition. Discover new horizons and paddle further with Starboard's expertly crafted boards designed to make your adventure smooth and enjoyable. Check out the range of Starboard touring boards today and get ready for your next journey. And the link to the Starboard website is in the show notes. Well, welcome to another episode of the SUP FM podcast, and on this show we chat with people from the SUP tribe or to people who can help us improve our knowledge and increase our love of both the sport and the water. Every episode is intended to inspire you or to help you to get more deeply immersed in the sport, whatever your current experience level, through my conversations with guests who include leading athletes, scientists, explorers, TED speakers, and New York Times best-selling authors. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please subscribe on your podcast platform of choice. And if you're already doom scrolling, then why not also take the opportunity to make sure that you're following us on Facebook, Instagram, and our new YouTube channel, where you can watch our chats and our bonus content. This season is all about adventure and accessibility, and in this episode I speak to Duncan Houlton. Duncan is a British expat living in Germany who has a deep passion for all things river related. He has a unique perspective on stand-up paddleboarding, combining his love of adventure with his desire to share the sport's therapeutic benefits with others. And his insights into the logistics and the mental challenges of a multi-day expedition will inspire you to plan your own adventures, while his commitment to inclusivity through projects like SUP Against Darkness highlights the power of the sport to bring people together. So I hope you enjoy my chat with adventurer, mental health advocate, and DJ Duncan Houlton. Hey Duncan, welcome to the SUP FM podcast.
Yeah, hi. Happy to be here. Been looking forward to it.
Well, we've been looking forward to having you on, and we first met back in April at SUP 12, which was one of those magical events that you can't fail to make new connections. But this year, you also fulfilled a long-held dream by paddling down the Rhine from Lake Constance down to Rotterdam. And that was in August, I think, and it took you about 3 weeks, 1,068 kilometres, if I remember rightly, which we're going to talk about today in a bit of detail. But it did sound like it was a full-on experience. How quickly did you recover afterwards?
I'm actually still recovering. I never thought that would be the case, because I've done like 5 or 6 days before, but 19 days of paddling against the wind and all the things that happened. I guess I'm mentally recovered. That took a while. I was very lethargic for a while, but I still got an issue with my elbow, which actually came afterwards, which is weird. But no, I'm pretty much there again. I'm paddling again, and
Brilliant.
Recovered to 90%, I would say.
Excellent. Well, your alter ego name on Facebook gives things away a little bit. You're also known as Flussmensch, which I understand means riverman in German. Yep. And obviously you are British, but you've been living in Germany for quite a while. So before we talk about your journey, I thought it would be interesting to find out a little bit more about you, because most people I talk to have picked up the sport recently in the last sort of 10, 15 years. And some of them have a previous sporting background before SUP. And you've actually got a pretty incredible history in skateboarding, because back in the early days of the sport, back in the late 70s and early 80s, you were one of the first UK professional skaters for a foundational brand, Deathbox Skateboards, and you were the face of the brand at competitions in magazines and books, and you had your own range of boards and various other products. And I think you'd probably be known these days as an early influencer. So could you just tell us about that part of your life and about your media appearances?
Media appearances, yeah, there are quite a few of those. It was I was in the second wave of skateboarding, really, because the first wave was like, 75 to 79, and then it died completely. So, in this second wave that came up, the early 80s, mid 80s, I went to America with a friend of mine, and we worked in a skateboard company there. And then when we came back, or he got deported because we were working illegally, like it is in California. And we started this skateboard company, Deathbox Skateboards, and it was kind of an 80s hype. It got very big because we were pretty much the only British brand at that point. Everybody's like America, all the American brands that people know. So it was quite difficult for us because we were innovating and doing an English thing. So there was a lot of hype, but there was a lot of stuff going against us. And we actually had a guy on the team who was a natural skateboarder, not like me. I had to work really hard at it. And he was a real unnatural skater, and he was absolutely amazing. And it was natural for us that he would be the first person who would be the professional and do all the stuff, because he'd just win every contest. And it just he didn't want to do it, so it sort of fell to me. And I was winning contests and stuff, but it wasn't that bad. So I had this sort of media thing. So I ended up being skateboard professional, which is what I always wanted to do. But I was kind of sat in it. It was a surprise. So and I was on TV quite a lot. Tiz was kind of things like that. You'd go on there. There would be, you'd go on there. You'd be your favorite pop stars in the next dressing room, and you do your little skateboard thing, and then they go on to the next thing. Things like that. They would only go for 2 minutes, but you were on television for 2 minutes, which was brilliant. Things to look back on.
Well, that's amazing. And I took the precaution of having a little sort of poke around the internet to find out what bits and pieces I could find. And I found a book which featured you. I think it was a how to skateboard or something like that. It was where it was sort of put together. All the photos were taken at a local skate park down here in Hampshire. And I understand that was part of a series with some notable sports stars of the era.
Yeah, one of the other guys was Daley Thompson. For athletics, and a couple of other, I can't remember what the other one. I never saw the other books. But it was, I was paid a holy sum of £70 for that. Amazing. And it took them ages to send the check. But I had the photos, so I could keep them in hostage. So it was, that was a very funny thing, because, I didn't actually have a copy of that book, and my mother found one in Australia and bought it in Australia and got it sent to me. So I do have a copy now, which is quite
that's brilliant. Well, I discovered it on eBay, and by the time I'd gone back to it, it had been hoovered up. So I don't know whether it was hoovered up recently or not. But and your skate alias was Wurzel. Yep. That was what you were known as. How did you get that moniker?
Well, I'm a hippie child, so I looked fairly scruffy around the time of 17 or 18, and the sister of my best friend at the time called me Wurzel, because she thought I was looking scruffy. I didn't shave very often, and had dungarees on, so she just called me, and that stuck. It stuck so quickly. It was sort of within a couple of months, I was just Wurzel. I wasn't Duncan anymore. It was how that's the way it happens when it's and I became that, and that was then my professional skateboard name as a. So
how long did you keep that going?
You mean the professional side or skating at all? The professional, it only went for 4 or 5 years or so, because street skateboarding came up pretty big, but then skateboarding went down again. Sort of like the end of the 80s, it went down again, and then it got incredibly popular after that. It was actually the most popular youth sport on the planet at one point, which is quite amazing to believe. But now we've got like a middle level pretty much, and we're in the Olympics and stuff like that. Which, so
absolutely. Yeah. And do you keep up with it? Do you still do it?
Don't. I've actually I do. I'll ride my longboard to work or do things like that. But actually skateboarding, it became the fact that it was actually hurting me to skate. It wasn't the fact that I would be falling off and hurting myself or endangering myself in that way. It would actually hurt. To skating itself became so painful because I had all these little needling injuries. And on my 50th birthday, I was thinking about how I'm going to replace this. I was looking for something to replace it. My best friend brought a SUP board with him. And the day after my 50th birthday party, we went paddling. And it was, I was very irritated with the fact that you have to stand facing forward, because I'm used to standing sideways on the skateboard. That was very irritating, first of all, but I just got on it and paddled, and it was instant. I knew that this was the replacement for what I've been doing for the last 40 years, So.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting, because SUP was also a replacement for me for my long-standing rugby career. And like you, you get to a point where you're so injured that everything hurts. If it takes you longer than a week to recover from a match, then you know that it's probably
just
time to retire.
Exertion. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think rugby is not one of the sports that you come away with few injuries. It tends to. There's all sorts of squashed fingers and
ribs, collarbones, everything,
teeth.
And so I've got them all, and the ones that I haven't got, my brothers have got. So definitely time to replace.
Yeah.
And just to finish off on the skateboarding side, as you said, skateboarding is there at the Olympics, and we've recently had the Paris Olympics. And one of the competitors was a guy from the UK called Andy McDonald, who beat the odds by competing at the advanced age of 51. Yeah. And bearing in mind the youngest competitor at the Olympics was a skateboarder who was 11. That was pretty impressive. I don't suppose that's...
span there from 11 to 51. Yeah.
That was what I was thinking of, but I also thought I'd be contractually obliged to ask you about Los Angeles Games in 4 years' time, but it sounds like that might be off the table for you.
I don't think so. No, I haven't been. I did have a time when I was about 45 where I got back into I was actually winning small contests here in Germany and stuff, but. I realized it was just it just hurt too much. I would do a certain trick and my dodgy shoulder would pop out. That sort of thing was happening where you're not even falling, so it was very, very difficult to, I could say, SUP, in itself saved my life, my mental, apart from the blue mind, benefits of being on the water, just finding something which replaced that and replaced it very well. It was, I'm very happy with that. Yeah. And that was 10 years ago. That was 10 years, almost 6. So, yeah.
Well, fabulous. And so let's talk about the Rhine and your journey. And you very kindly recorded an audio diary of your journey. And listening to it sounded like an epic adventure, both personally for you, going through the natural and isolated landscapes and obviously the experience of nature, but also through the urban and industrial areas down what was sometimes a really busy river. And we're going to play a bit from that audio diary, right at the end of this episode. But as I said, you're Flussmensch on Facebook, Riverman in German. How much experience have you actually had on the river? I would assume that's where you paddle on a regular basis.
I live on the Neckar, so that's a side arm of the Rhine, you could say. That's 200 kilometers long, and I did that about 5 years ago. I did the whole the 200 kilometers with 24 locks, and very inexperienced and so on. That's how it kind of started. And because I actually started paddling on mild whitewater, because that was the place where a friend of mine has a garden next to the river, and we would paddle there. So, with a combination of balance from skateboarding and then learning it like in that kind of environment where you've got small waterfalls and you're learning to boof before you learn to paddle straight, kind of thing. So going on the Rhine and going on big rivers and all that kind of thing was not really such a big thing for me. It wasn't such a big hurdle because the environment was, apart from the ships is a big something in itself, but these big waves that you get very often because there are a lot of ships and there's a lot of the river tends to funnel the wind as well. So you have wind and you have chop and ship waves combining.
So a lot going on, and I guess that there are some sort of specific rules and so on, which we'll talk about in a second. But how long had you been planning this Rhine adventure?
I always wanted to do it because a friend of mine, Tim Cruiser, did it. He did the Donau, the Danube 4 years ago. Which is 2,800 kilometers, and it was kind of the natural thing because I spent so much time on the Rhine, and I'm not a competitive person, and I'm not really someone who does ultra things and stuff. But I found myself spending more and more time on the water and doing longer and longer trips on the Rhine and elsewhere as well. And at some point, I realized that it was not about actually the kilometers, although that was the kind of the goal. It was about the time spent on the water, and the more kilometers you do, the more time you spend on the water, and the more pure your blue mind will be. And at some point, I realized that, but I didn't know why. For a while, I didn't know why I was doing it. It was just this absolute addiction to spending as much time on the water as possible.
And part of that is obviously preparing for it as well. It's, someone said it's better to travel than to arrive. I guess that's sort of all part of it, and planning and getting ready for it, and, buying bits of kit. Yeah. It is a pleasure in itself. Yeah. Albeit not for the postman.
Yeah,
but
anticipation.
But you'd obviously been planning it for a while. So just tell us about the starting point in Lake Constance, because it's a pretty spectacular and beautiful part of the world, isn't it?
It's incredible because you have this 64 kilometer long lake which feeds into the Rhine. The Alp Rhine comes in the other side, but you're not actually allowed to paddle there. You can go through with a whitewater board and stuff, but you're not actually allowed to paddle there. So the start is in Constance, and it's fairly unique because you have this bridge going over, and on the bridge is the 0 kilometer sign. There aren't any after that. The first one comes up, I think, about kilometer 83 or something. But there's this 0 kilometer sign. Pretty much a year before I got to go, I was standing there at 6 o'clock in the morning on my board looking at the sign and getting very het up because I hadn't done it yet. And I swore to myself at that point, standing in front of it. I was actually, the tears flowing down my face because I was just so frustrated, and swore to myself that I would do it in the next year, which I didn't. It took a bit longer, but I did it. And it was kind of like, I decided to do it at that point, and then it happened.
Brilliant. So just sort of, if we sort of run through some of the logistics of your trip, because, it'd be good to do a sort of quasi how-to guide if other people want to do this. So when you start off, Constance is a bit odd because you've got the Rhine is the border effectively, isn't it? So you've got Switzerland on one side, you've got Germany on the other, and it kind of crisscrosses. I guess you crisscross the border during that first X number of kilometres down there pretty constantly. The land borders, obviously being Europe, are relatively loose, but for anyone trying that or doing that, were there any problems or border restrictions actually descending that?
None whatsoever. The only border is the fact that if you have to eat on the Swiss side, you're paying twice as much for your food or your meal as you are on the other side.
That's useful information, because that was going to be my second question, as to whether or not there are any differences sort of eating or sleeping or whatever on the other side. I mean, I guess you dealt with the eating bit there, but in terms of sleeping and the whole question of wild camping, is one side sort of better catered for, or you're not going to get arrested on one side versus the other?
On the Swiss side, when you go down to the Rhine Fall, which is where the biggest waterfall in Europe, you have to walk around there, and you're actually going. That's one of the corners where both sides are Switzerland. But after that, after a while, it's pretty strict left. It's German on the right and Switzerland on the other side. And it's interesting to talk to people when you're going down there. So, sitting on a beach, camping, talking to the fishermen there, and they tell you all the stories about the rich Swiss people coming over and buying all the lawnmowers, the cheap lawnmowers at Aldi and stuff. That kind of thing going on. It's quite interesting, and there are definitely cultural differences there, separated by this river, and it's quite interesting. You get to, because you're talking to people on the way and stuff, you get to get that firsthand, and it's quite interesting.
So you get your lawnmowers on the German side, obviously not on the Swiss side. Yeah. Actually, that was something mentioned to me by a friend, because we've got some friends who live in Basel, and they. And that's really weird, because you got France as well.
It's they call it the dry Ländereck, which is the three countries in one corner. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's depending on what they want to buy, they go to the appropriate country for it, which is a bit.
If you want cheese, you go to. Well, it depends. If you're German and you want cheese, you go to France. If you're Swiss and you want cheese, you probably stay in Switzerland.
Exactly.
Depending on how things are. Yeah.
Brilliant. And that first stretch as you go down, it then becomes reliably German on one side, Swiss on the other. Are there any rules in terms of wild camping, or is that something that you should avoid and try and camp in a formal place if possible?
It's you've got a lot of wild camping places. My thing is I'm sleeping on my board with my bajau tent, which is out on the board. I'm not actually sleeping on. You can sleep on the water with it, but I don't. When I'm doing a big tour like that, I don't tend to, because you've got things wet and whatever, but that means that I'm fairly flexible with where I can sleep. But surprisingly, there are much more wild camping sites on the Swiss side than there is on the German side. But if you're on the Rhine, generally on the big Rhine, and you're between cities and towns, nobody's ever going to have a problem with you sleeping on the bank, because your nature reserves that you have are normally around the back in the backwaters. So if you're just sleeping on the bank, it's like you're not going to have a problem with that. It's theoretically illegal because you're not allowed to do it. But if you're doing things like not setting a tent up, then it's not actually camping. You have to have it. It's interesting in Germany. If you sleep in a hammock, you can sleep almost anywhere. You're not going to sleep in a nature reserve, of course, but somewhere where you say it's not actually allowed to wild camp, but you can sleep in a hammock. And and the hammock can have a roof over it.
The fly sheet.
Yeah. That's one way to get around that thing. But I've never had a problem with that. You've got the situation where you're coming in late at night and you're going off early in the morning, and you're not, zero impact.
Leave no trace.
Yeah. So I don't really have too much of a problem with that. It is possible that you could have a problem with it. I mean, of course, if you're coming in late at night, you don't actually know what it looks like, and you wake up in the morning and you're in the middle of something, a football ground or whatever. You don't know. But in the way the Rhine works, you have a very big bank left and right, with a lot of space before a forest starts, or you have fields or whatever. So there's normally quite a lot of space there, and sleeping on a beach isn't gonna bother anyone.
Yeah, it's sensible, isn't it? Yeah. Being sensible, leave no trace. And in terms of the other sort of admin dull stuff, do you have to pay for a river license or anything like that?
There's in Germany. Quite a lot of the lakes that you go on, they have you have to pay to get into the lake to swim, and then they have their all the amenities there, so you're paying for the amenities basically and keeping the lake clean or whatever. But on the rivers, there's nothing. A lot of the rivers are commercially used, so the upkeep of the river and all the things that happen around there is either paid by the government or by the users, the commercial users. So you don't have that. I was very surprised in England that that you have to pay for almost every piece of water to go onto it. I was very surprised by that. I guess it's a commercial thing, and it doesn't seem to be working. There's the rivers are all dirty anyway. There's a lot of
well, it's what's coming out into it, which is the major problem. And
I think it seems to be the big problem there is what we have here with the sewage is that it when there's a storm or there's too little water, then you've got something coming out, but it's a very small percentage. But it seems to be in England that the sewage works are just hopelessly outdated, and the amount that's going in can't be filtered, and it's being sent out into the river.
Yeah, well, we did a deep dive into that, if that's an appropriate metaphor to use to talk about the subject matter, when we did Race for Rivers with Lizzie Carr and Planet Patrol, and there's recently been a huge protest in London. But you're absolutely right. It seems to be when it rains and when it doesn't rain in the UK is the only time when sewage goes directly into the river. So it is a hot potato, to misuse another metaphor.
I of course listened to all your podcasts, so I know all about that. I heard that one. I listened to that one with you.
Good man.
With you and your frog in the frog.
Yes, the frog, my frog in the tent. Yeah, I don't know who was more confused, me or the frog, but probably me.
About
actually.
50-50.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant. So heading down the Rhine, so that early stretch, obviously you've got the various different countries either side, but there's also a sort of split in the river there, because you've got the Grand Canal d'Alsace on one side, and then you've got the Rhine proper. So it's a bit like some of our sort of commercial waterways in the UK, where you've got the original path of the river and then you've got the commercial bit. So I presume you'd stick to the Rhine side, would you? What was your path of access?
Well, you come down to Basel, and then the official shipping starts. So there are large boats before that, but then you get the ships. That's where it starts. So, as you said, I see you've been doing your research. The Canal d'Alsace is, that's the area of, France, which is on that side of the river, which is after Basel. You've got, France on the left and Germany on the right. There, you've got normally, I've been down there and I paddled with Tim Cruiser there when he was doing the Rhine, and he went over all the big locks, and there, it's okay if there are two of you, because you've got these big, like 45 degrees concrete, walls going up. And if there's two of you, then you can carry your board up, get it on your wagon, and then you can go. But if you're alone, you're pulling your board up. And so I decided to go down to the more on the right hand side. So you've got either this thing, you're in with all the big ships, which isn't nearly a problem because it's a regulated thing. You have to get out of the locks fairly early. So you're walking a kilometer and a half, 35-degree heat. There's, and sometimes you don't know where you get in, where you get out, because the government just says, well, the people who are looking up, they just say, go down the side. So I went down the side, routes most of the time. There are certain situations where sometimes you don't find the way to get out, and you end up in the big canal anyway. So although you've got all these maps, we've got apps when it's hot and you're tired and whatever, you make mistakes, navigating mistakes. We almost know what direction you're going. But which part of the Rhine you're on, sometimes it's a bit ambiguous. But the problem is you've either got these big locks that you're going around, on the Canal d'Alsace, and then it goes further down. Or you've got the other side, which is, people think it's a natural canal, but it isn't. Both of them are built to regulate the water. So if there's a lot of water, it goes down in the natural canal to keep the shipping still going in the big one. And there's one stretch there, where the Canal d'Alsace, starts. Directly after that, there are 14 rapids, one after the other in a stretch of about 50 kilometers. Which is actually quite a lot of fun, because you've just been paddling on the big river all the time, and then you've got a few rapids. I've got a river fin now, which actually, hinges up. And that was brilliant, because that really takes a lot of the stress away. Because if you're paddling 50, 60 kilometers on that kind of river, and then you're having to be getting down on your knees or portaging or whatever, and as I say, 30, 35 degrees heat, then you have to have a strategy for that. And one of the strategies was having this fin, which is made in Bavaria. They have their own thing, and it's brilliant. It's like 8 centimeters about this, and it goes up like this. So you've actually got an 8 centimeter safety area, and that's sloped as well. So you're not really going to do the Superman most of the time. I mean, it can still happen, but it's so much easier. It makes your life easier in that situation.
So it's got a curve. So it's a bit of a weed fin as well. Does it? Is that?
It's quite small. It's only about this deep. Your normal fin is like this and then tapers down.
Gotcha.
It's only about that. So it's not, you're not as stable as you normally would be. And it's got this body underneath, which is 8 centimeters high, and it hinges up into it.
Right.
So if you hit something, it pushes up. And 99% of the time it works. So that made things easier, but you've got this situation where you go into these that one thing with all the rapids was one part of it. And then you go into that section is the portage section. I just checked it actually. I was looking at Google Maps, and it was 32 portages in 7 days. So, it's pretty wild.
That's quite a lot of hauling in and out.
Yeah.
So what was your strategy then? Did you say that you had some wheels that you used?
I've got actually, there's this German firm called Eckler, and they do all sorts of, they have, I think, 30 different models of portaging wagons, mainly for kayaks. But there's this one which is actually a seat, which is absolutely amazing if you're doing an adventure and you've done 90 kilometers on the Rhine, and you're sitting in front of your fire, eating your tea and sitting in a comfortable chair. So it's a chair. It's a portage wagon, but it's also, I got all my stuff. I can take all my stuff, my board and everything that I need in the train, it's called a beach trolley.
Right.
And that's something which makes my life much easier, because 32 portages is just, and that's only up to about a third, a little bit more than a third. About 35%, maybe 40% of the Rhine is these 32 portages. So it's, that's crazy. And you've got you go down you go down the big weir, and you've got this side arm, and there's like 4 or 5 of these mini weirs in there, but you have to go up 12 steps and then back down 12 steps for every one. The one day was 11, portages and about 45 kilometers. And I did a reel pertaining to that, where I just said, it's the hardest day ever. Up to that point, there was a day later. There was later in the journey, it was even harder than that because of wind. But that was, I grew quite a lot on that day, and learned quite a lot about resilience, mindset and everything, because every portage you got to, you felt like someone up there was testing you to your utmost limit, physically, mentally, and just not believing that this situation is how it is. And that's, of course, if you're paddling for hours and hours, and it's much more personal when you get into that kind of situation. So and I've had a lot of experience with it, but still it tested me to my utmost that one day, definitely.
Yeah. So just coming back to portaging, were you able to get everything over in one trip, or you didn't have to do the sort of back and forth thing? Because that really is wearing. No,
there were a couple of times where I did that, where I would take both big bags off the board, and I've got a small bag, a rucksack, and a big bag. Weighted to, you got 60% of the weight at the back, 40 at the front, which seems to be what everybody does. So where there were the 12 steps going up and down, I was actually taking the bags off and taking them up. But in a normal situation, like in England, where the small locks and stuff, I can get my board directly onto the wagon. Strap it in depending on how the portage is, because if it's like lots of stones and stuff, it's going to fall off. So you have to put straps on it. You might be going up and down steep slopes and stuff. But that works really well. And once I've got it on there, Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it takes a bit longer. Sometimes it's nice. But once I've got it on there, I've actually got it in about the height of my hip. And I just grab the handle and roll, and it's not that difficult. It's the getting in and out of the water that is normally what causes the problems. It's also, you get to certain places, and there was the one place there was 100 steps just going down. So I just I put it was going down, luckily, and not going up. I just bumped it down. I put the straps on and pulled them really tight and just bumped down the 100 steps. It must have looked quite amazing. I should have taken a video of it, actually. But it was
pretty resilient trolley there as well.
Yeah,
to put up with that.
I've had it for a while, and
punishment.
It's done really well. They've been making these trolleys for, I think, 80 years or something. So they really know what they're doing, and it's a brilliant piece of kit, as we would say.
Brilliant, excellent. Well, that's a deep dive into the portages. It's probably one for the specialist niche, but those of us who know, because it is a bit of a pain and a bit of a feature with that. So, you talked briefly about your setup. So just tell us a bit about your tent, because you set it up on top of the board itself, don't you?
It actually has straps that go underneath the board, and you pull them tight, so you're actually on the board, and then the ends go onto the nose and the tail of the board, and you've got straps that pull on, you pull those tight. So it's actually fitted to the board, which means that, it's a one person tent, but you can get all your luggage inside when it's raining. And you've got the added advantage of sleeping on that when you've got a lot of rain and stuff, you're away, or if it's cold, you're isolated on your board. And it works incredibly well, but you can also sleep. I mean, the absolutely amazing thing about it is that you can sleep on the water, which I've done quite a lot. It's not something I really do on the tours because, I'm on the Rhine, you wouldn't really want to sleep on the fast moving water, but
wake up in a different place.
Yeah.
I guess you'd if you wake up, you have to remember where you are, because if you want to nip out for a pee, you might get more than you bargained for.
Well, I would never sleep in deeper than knee deep water, because it's stabilized. It's actually got stabilizers on the side of it, which I leave off when I'm going on a long journey, because I know I'm not going to sleep on the water. Then the tent's lighter because of that. But it's got these big stabilizers on the line. You can't actually tip over. It's amazing. When people see pictures of it, there are two camps immediately. There's the people who say, "Oh God, I'm going to drown. You're going to drown. Everybody's going to drown." And the other side is people say, "Hey, it's absolutely brilliant. Where can I get one?" And there's nothing in between for society. It's amazing.
Well, it sounds like a very useful bit of technology, and maybe we can link to it in the show notes. We're all about innovation with our collaboration partners, and we'd like to thank Oscar Propulsion for their support for this episode. Tested and proven, their innovative SUP paddle slits dramatically enhance paddling efficiency. This isn't a fad. Research shows a more efficient use of power input from the paddler and a significant reduction in stress on the body. To paddle brands, now's your chance to license this game-changing tech, and to our paddle community, say goodbye to paddle flutter and get ready for smoother and longer rides. Discover more, elevate your paddling experience, and join the revolution at oscarpropulsion.com/sport. Since 1979, Palm Equipment have been the go-to brand for paddle sports enthusiasts across the globe. Founded by paddlers for paddlers, Palm creates innovative, high-quality gear from head to toe and specialising in apparel and PFDs. Known as the first to produce women-specific paddle products, including the new Tika Women's PFD, Palm ensures every adventurer is equipped for safety and style. With a commitment to sustainability and community, Palm's mission is to ensure everyone enjoys a lifetime on the water. Discover their range at specialty shops worldwide and make your paddle sport experience safer and more enjoyable with Palm Equipment. Visit palm.equipment or see the link in the show notes to gear up today. Just one final one. Obviously, we know that sleep is a really important part of any expedition, particularly a multi-day expedition. You need to make sure that you get that sleep. So, are you sleeping directly on the board itself? Because sometimes that can be quite cold because it's got a sort of, it's air filled. Do you have a bedroll?
No, I have a special mattress. I mean, I have a very damaged body from skateboarding. So, I have like a 10 centimeter thick mattress, which is, it's not quite sleeping at home, but it's very, very comfortable. I've got a very good pillow too. And I've got a very,
there you go.
I've got a special,
that's the other bit.
When you're sleeping on a narrow mattress, it's very, I've got this, special thing, which is, it's actually a quilt. And it's got a sheet that goes underneath it and the quilt is fitted to it. So you can actually turn around inside. I guess from camping, when you're in a sleeping bag and you try to turn over, the sleeping bag's going to turn with you. And this system works like that. And that's something that I've found that makes my sleep much better because, it's difficult enough to sleep sometimes on a narrow mattress and stuff in it. But if you've got that situation, that works brilliant. That's one of the things that I insisted on getting the best possible sleep because it's, sometimes you're sleeping in weird places, So
yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've got your sleeping game absolutely nailed down there. Okay, we've gone into quite a bit of detail around the logistics. Yeah. So you're descending down. Obviously, as you mentioned, you're doing this in August. Yeah. So there are some pretty high temperatures. Mm-hmm. There is obviously a requirement for hydration and nutrition. Yeah. So, and volumes of that as well. However, your local supermarket isn't necessarily sited right next to the river. I don't know. It may well be on the German side, not the Swiss side. How do you manage that refueling as you go down? Is that something that you would sort of scope out before you go?
I wanted to do a list of all the local places where it would be possible to, get a meal or whatever. But I only did it for the couple of places where I've never been before I did that. But it was the planning was too much. And actually, my thing is to be more spontaneous with it because I normally I don't know where I'm going to sleep. And that's the freedom of it. It's an adventure and it's more of an adventure if you're not, I would never like to plan a river completely because you can miss out on things. And to answer your question, I never really had to walk that far to buy stuff. And there are a lot of, restaurants on the river. So you have that situation too. And you have these yacht clubs, which are like in the river. And as a clubhouse, they have an old cruise ship as a clubhouse. And, a couple of times there, I was, I'd just come into this clubhouse completely soaking wet because it's just been, drenched by a storm. And you come in and, say, oh, do you think I could, stay the night? And they said, yeah, you can sleep in the clubhouse. And, oh, we've just finished a barbecue. Here's some food. And here's a shandy and a beer as well. That kind of thing. These yacht clubs tend to be, people who have their small boats and they go up and down the river and have adventures too. So they're very, amenable to people who are traveling in that way. So.
Brilliant. Oh, that sounds like you were sorted, and you're absolutely right. It's effectively a sort of urban adventure, I guess, to an extent, for most of it, which is unusual, I guess. We've talked a lot on the show about Yukon 1000, where you'd be trekking for quite some time to get to the local supermarket. There, you have to take everything with you, but this is the variation, I guess, that us in Europe, in the UK, across Europe are most likely to be involved in, really. So that's why it's really useful to understand how you achieved it. Now, you mentioned there a little bit about planning, and obviously you don't want to over plan. It's kind of the Goldilocks plan, not too much, not too little, but just the right amount. And I guess that you at least had an idea in your mind as to the amount of mileage that you wanted to achieve, even if you sort of changed that sort of aspiration on a daily basis. Was that the way that you've managed your objectives?
Yeah, you've got three different sections there. You've got the the first section were going down to Iffertsheim, which is where the last lock is. So you had all these portages, and a lot of that I hadn't been there before, so I didn't know anything. So yeah, it was knowing. You always have this goal in the back of your head that it would be nice to be able to do that, in that time. I actually took longer for that section because it was just when I got to my house in Heidelberg for the one day when I stayed at home, I was very surprised how tired I was. So you've got that section, then you've got the free flowing section down to almost Holland. And then when it gets to Holland, the river gets wider and the flow isn't as much. And then there's 2, 3 locks, depending on which route you take, 3 locks. And then the water it doesn't move at all. So you've got this thing where you've been doing like 80 kilometers a day, and suddenly you're only doing 50 or 60, and then you're only doing 40. And then the wind comes as well. So, I've spent so much time in the river that I've got this thing where I just go with the flow. And one of the things where I got to the wind, I had a mantra prepared, which was my own personal Yukon, sung to the tune of my own personal Jesus from Depeche Mode, but I didn't actually use that. It was just keep on paddling, and you say keep on paddling for every paddle stroke. And then what I noticed then, which was very quiet, I was getting a bit mad at that point. You're on your own and you're just pushing through, and you've had wind for 3 or 4 days, and I was saying it to every paddle stroke, but because of the way I was paddling and the way I was fighting against the wind, my paddle cadence went up from about 45, 48 up to 60, 65. So try saying, keep on paddling 65 times in a minute. It's pretty difficult. So I was
saying techno version, yeah, isn't
it? Yeah, hard techno. Yeah. So had times there where I was going a bit mad. And I looked at my stats after that when I talked to SUP Junkie in when I got to Rotterdam. I said I'd looked at my stats and I was actually padding on the right hand side for 160 kilometers non-stop, which is. It's just, it's good that I said to her at the time, it's good that I looked at the stats afterwards and wasn't actually aware of that. Yeah. You're aware of the pain, but you're not aware of the stats, because I think that could just kill your mind.
And your elbow, you mentioned your elbow injury. Is that on your right side?
It's on my right side, yeah. But I didn't notice anything. At the time, I had a tweak in my shoulder. And I had to make the decision: do I stop and try to heal it, or do I try to paddle through? And I just took through to ibuprofen and paddled through, and it went away. It was okay. Yeah. It was like one of these temporary things. Maybe you're not getting enough oxygen, or whatever, or dehydrated or whatever. And I paddled through on that. So I didn't actually notice the elbow at that point. That came afterwards. Funny enough.
And generally, we sort of get to this subject a little bit earlier, but in terms of your kit, what we we talked about the camping kit and so on, but the actual paddle board and the paddle, what were you using there?
They're from Light Venture, which is actually a German company which is in the Black Forest, and I actually paddled past them on the trip, which is kind of how I got to know them. So I've got a special endurance paddle which they have, which is it's not very wide, and it's 185 square inches, which is sort of like the middle range for most people nowadays. But it's very small and slim, a bit like the a lot of paddles are a lot slimmer, and it's got a medium to it's quite flexy in the shaft, although it's a two-piece, and that helps me a lot because it's I think in that kind of journey, efficiency takes second second rank to looking after your body. And with that kind of thing, it helps a lot that I've got a fairly high paddle cadence anyway, and that fits then. So you're doing more at a less intensity, or you're doing more. You're going higher speed with your cadence.
Yeah, exactly. So the strength that you apply to it needs to be lighter in order to allow yourself to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, my mind, not just because they're one of the sponsors of the show, tends to go to the Oscar propulsion type endurance paddle. So it would be interesting. Obviously, you can never compare like for like, but the effect of those sorts of slitted blades on potentially your form and also the amount of power going through. But
it's
anyway,
a very, very interesting concept. I had an old paddle which I had, but it broke at some point. But it was very flexi shaft, and it had a flexi blade as well. It was a fiberglass blade. And it was also 85 square inches from Werner, which is, they know what they're doing, because I actually, when I did my 100 kilometer challenge on the Rhine, it was 100 kilometers in 10 hours. Which sounds amazing, but you've got the flow going there. So but it was still it was a big challenge for me, and I didn't have actually any muscle pain after that whatsoever using that paddle, which is, it's 10 hours of intensive paddling. Really trying to keep that 10 kilometers an hour average going, and no problem whatsoever. So I think it's there should be more research into that side of things. The slitted paddle, the Oscar propulsion, I've talked to them a couple of times. I mean, it's a brilliant idea, and it's this idea of efficiency. We're not all racers, and even if we are racers, we're not most of us, 95% of us aren't we're not capable of noticing those differences, and we can't measure them either. So why are we doing it? I mean, do we have to have the same paddle as Kai Lenny? No, we don't. We don't need it. We won't be able to use it. And and some of the time we're destroying our bodies with it,
exactly. Long-term effects, and particularly for these ultra sort of races, these huge distances, it's the accumulated effects on the body, which clearly you've kind of suffered from. Albeit it sounds, well, exactly. Yeah. And, I know that the guys who did the Yukon, which is sort of 18 hours a day, they were still recovering months and months after, probably similar to you.
The temporary nerve damage and, stuff like that. I can't imagine doing the Icon at my age, because I'm now, I have this battered body from skateboarding anyway. And doing that, I think, the temporary nerve damage would possibly not be temporary if I did it, because that would have a lot of respect for that.
So while we're talking about the getting old and achy and all of the effects on the body, something that's been there within the SUP scene for years, even for people who sort of paddle fairly casually and fairly short distances, is the foot pain. Yeah, and I've. You can always recognise that it's an issue, because effectively you are paddling and all of your strength is going through the soles of your feet. Yeah. You're transferring it, you're putting yourself past your
transmission to the board.
Yeah. Exactly. So it's logical that there should be some level of foot pain. And I think there are ways of managing that, but I just wondered how you sort of managed that for your trip for that number of days. Did you wear sort of shoes, or were you barefoot, or was it a bit of a mixture?
Well, one of the things I do is try to have my feet in the water as often as possible. And normally when I'm going, I had plantar fasciitis, and the way I cured that was going paddling in autumn and winter and getting my feet going paddling and getting my feet in the water for an hour every day, and it went away. And so that's one of the things that I do, is get my feet into the water, because even if it's 35 degrees, the water's going to be 10 degrees or 15 degrees colder than the ambient temperature. And as we know, water cools you down. I think it's a factor of 18 or something compared to air. So, that's something that works. Also, I just walk up and down the board a bit. And the way my board's set up, I set my back bag up so that when I have a break and I either have my feet in the water or I'm leaning on the bag, and I pack my bag, especially where my sleeping bag and all the soft up is in that area of the bag, so I can actually lean on the bag quite comfortably. That's one of those flush mensch tips that it's things that you learn that, if you're many days on the water, you almost do it automatically. That kind of thing, because, I think moving, this classic thing, you say you should roll your feet and stuff, but I don't think if you're constantly paddling, you can do it if you're just leisure paddling and stuff. But I think, I see so many people paddling and I'm not saying you have to bend so down so far that your nose is touching the board, but I think people don't bend enough, because if you're bending a little bit more, there's a lot of people using just their arms or only bending a little bit. And I think if you bend more, you automatically roll through your feet. And at that point, when I started doing that again, my foot pain went away, even, with like 12 hours paddling or something. So I think that's a big factor, because you see so many people, it's kind of you learn to paddle and then you get your way of paddling and you feel comfortable with it. But I think that's definitely a factor.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, people use their feet with a sort of death grip, particularly when they're sort of early on, and then that also maps with a lack of movement from the hips and sort of reaching forward and so on. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a factor which comes with experience, I guess. The other thing is the pre-prep as well, and plantar fasciitis is a pretty horrible thing if anyone's ever suffered from that. It sounds like your treatment is to reduce the inflammation by getting it cold and so on. But there's also lots of foot exercises and so on that you can do in order to sort of pre-strengthen your feet so that you're less likely to suffer. Yep. So I think that's something which, that sort of cramping of the feet is something I think we've all suffered from at some point.
Yeah, I think everybody has to go through that if you paddle if you're paddling for more than half an hour, it comes, yeah.
But, it'd be interesting to explore that whole foot strength thing, because everyone's doing the kettlebells and the pull-ups and all of that sort of stuff. And I say everyone, I occasionally do that sort of stuff, but it's the feet where everything is coming from. So we need to make sure that we don't neglect that one.
There's a very interesting thing about that. I watched a health podcast, and it was about spreading your feet, learning to have space between your toes, and you have to learn that muscle memory. You have to learn that because you don't do it because we're stuck in shoes all the time, and that is something which can also help with plantar fasciitis. It also helps your balance. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, and something increasingly important. You're right, you get foot spacers or toe spacers. And then there's also sort of exercises you can do with your feet where you're raising your little toe and then your other toe all the way up to your big toe. I mean, it takes a bit of practice to do that stuff. Yeah. There's all sorts of exercises. But what I'll do is I'll get a foot expert. I'll get a foot expert on, because I think that might be quite useful for a future episode.
And for balance too. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so coming back to the Rhine and then, some of the logistics. You mentioned some of the big beasts, the big boats and tankers and all of that sort of stuff, which is coming around. So it's a pretty dynamic environment to be paddling in. So what are the rules that we should be aware of, other than 360-degree watch to see what's sort of coming around by us? I presume you stick to the right, do you, in European rivers?
Pretty much that's the theory, but depending on the situation, you have these breakwaters, and further down in Holland the breakwaters are always out of the water. So you've got this bay between. Further up, they depending on the water level, they can be under the water, half submerged, only submerged when a ship goes past, on all variants of that. So you have this situation where you maybe got less water and theoretically you're staying on the right, but the ship coming up is on his left, which is your right, and you haven't got any space. And if the river's running quite a lot, then going into the bay isn't much of an option because, first of all, you've got the flow going in there. So you're going to be thrown over this breakwater at some point. And then you've got the sucking of the ship when it comes past, and it pulls the water out of the bay and throws it back in again. And you're not very far away from it. So in that situation, I would go over to the other side if that's possible. But there are all sorts of variations there. And I do have like a safety release where I say, think about, I have actually on this trip, or for the first time ever, I actually got out of the river at certain points. Where I normally paddle, there are big ships and there are sometimes 5 or 6 ships, from where you're standing. But they tend to stay pretty much in their lanes as far as it goes. But if there's no one coming, they will go into the deepest water traveling, and there's no one coming. There's not a ship coming. They'll just go where they want to go to use less fuel, or be faster, or a combination of both. So, it's a matter of, knowing the rules, and you're supposed to stay 50 meters away. The rules that you're supposed to on the Rhine is you have to stay at least 50 meters away from the ships, which is a very good thing to do. I would say, just stay as far away as possible away from them. But you have this situation where there are ships going up and coming down, and theoretically you'd have to get out every time, but you can't do that if you're on a 50 kilometer, 60 kilometer, 100 kilometer trip. You're not going to want to get out of the water. So you have to have certain situations where it could be the situation where there's a ship on the right and there's a ship on the on the left, and you go down the middle, and the ship captains wouldn't be very happy about that, but they also wouldn't be happy if I was, in the, flying onto the rocks, in these bays, so, there are certain situations where I've learned to do that. I have developed a sixth sense. When we're paddling, 5 or 6 people, I'm normally the person who knows there's a ship coming, although you can't see it. I don't know if I detect the vibrations or whatever, but spent so much time on the river. I think after the Rhine, I'm up to about 6,000 to 7,000 kilometers on the Rhine now. So I have spent a lot of time there, getting up to the 10,000 hours. That you need to be the master. Yeah.
There you go, master on the ride. Just covering off the safety bit, we've had some discussions, and you left some information in your audio diary around your approach to PFDs, because the guidance is that we religiously wear PFDs. The best one is the one you're wearing, all of that sort of stuff. But there are other considerations you need to incorporate when you are doing a trip of this sort, particularly with the sort of hazards that you're dealing with on the Rhine.
Yeah, you have a situation there that when you're on the Rhine, you are never going to be more than 70 meters from a bank. The current is a factor, but only in certain situations, because, the only person who's going to drown in that current in a normal situation in open water is someone who tries to swim against the current, which is just stupid, but it does happen. So you've got the situation, you're on a stand-up paddleboard. And as we know, as a stand-up paddleboard, in comparison to a kayaker or a canoeist, if you're inexperienced, you're back on the board within 30 seconds if you fall in, and you can paddle away from the ship. If you fall in front of a ship and you can't get back on your board, something's happened, and you have to swim away from a ship that's coming directly towards you, and you have a 15 Newton, maybe even 18 Newton, 17 Newton PFD, you can only swim a third of the speed that you normally have with swimming. And you're putting yourself in a situation where you're in front of the ship and you can't get out of the way, because you need to get like 50 meters away from the ship. The board is your first safety. You've got your leash, your waist leash. You can release if you're in a safety situation there. But if you have this instance where something happens and you're there in the water and you've got a PFD on and a ship's coming and it's, maximum of 70 meters to the bank, the actual situation is that you're safer without. I'm talking about a situation here where I've got a rest tube PFD, which I can use if I get into a situation, when I'm falling in, where I can't use the board. I'm away from the board. The board's gone, and, I'm feeling weak or I'm tired or whatever. And I can use that, and that works well. I practice that, and that's my kind of safety thing, because, you've got a lot of ships, and when you're on the whole day on the river, you're seeing 50 ships. So you're in quite often in this situation where you could be falling. We don't fall very often, experienced paddlers, we don't fall. And we have a situation where it's people who've been paddling for years. They haven't fallen for years. And I think that's also a safety factor, that people don't spend much time in the water. You're safe. You've got and you see people with 2mm wetsuits. They're warm enough because they're sweating and whatever, and there's no wind, so they're okay. They've got a jacket on top. But if they fall in and spend quite a lot of time in the water, they're not going to be, especially if they're sweating, they're not going to be in a good situation. But because you never fall in, it's also a safety factor, because I see that more with kayakers and canoeists. They're in a t-shirt. They might have a PFD on, but they're in a t-shirt, and it's 5 degrees air temperature and 5 degrees water. And there we have the what John Frith said from the Yukon 1000. The guy who did the starboard sprint, is it the expedition board?
Bruce Kirkby.
He's actually saying when he does these wild things around the coast up in Canada there, that he is now using a SUP rather than a kayak, because he can't get back in the kayak fast enough or efficiently enough and without water in the boat. And
very much more safe.
So it's actually safer in that way. So there are a lot of misconceptions there, and people see a wobbly guy on a board and think it's unsafe, but it's actually safer than all these people who never fall in, kayakers and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Looking at
your kit nice and close as well.
Oh, I could show you that. This is my innovation here. This is the palm belt here. It's, I think, the rescue belt. It's got a pocket here, and there's my phone in there, and it's on a lanyard. So, because no point in having a waterproof case if it lands at the bottom of the river. You need to keep it. And
that's what we all know.
And I've got my PFD on the front here. This is probably not allowed, but it's sewn onto it. So I've got everything in one thing, and I can release just the leash back there, or I can release the whole belt, because as we know, on the river, you can actually catch on the belt as well. That's also a possibility. So,
brilliant. Good bit of innovation going there. Okay. So we've talked about the logistics quite a lot. Yeah. We talked about the physical efforts and the things that we could do to deal with that. I think the body has been comprehensively dealt with. Yep. The other bit, which we referred to, is what's going on up top. The mental and the emotional challenges of long distance paddling, and it's a bit of a yin and yang type thing. We've got the benefits of spending time on the water and in nature and so on, and there's lots and lots of positives. But as you mentioned, you have to push through things. There are times of the day when maybe you haven't kept up with your nutrition or hydration or whatever. There's physiological reasons. There's weather reasons. A headwind or the wind just blowing on one side. It can sort of play havoc with your mind, particularly if you're coming at it from multiple days of paddling. So just talk us through. I mean, we talked about your techno version of your paddling song, which I'm sure we can all identify with. What other sort of approaches or what other reflections have you got about that, dealing with that level of stress and pressure on the water?
I would say it's, for me, not really a deep level of stress, because I enjoy the journey so much that I don't even have to say to myself, well, you decided to be here. I've heard that from a lot from people. They got to the point where they're saying, wait a minute, you're complaining now. Why are you complaining? You decided to do this, I don't really have that, but I have to say that the time where I think it was 160 kilometers, I haven't measured it exactly, while I was just paddling on the right hand side. It's kind of this things that you don't expect, because you're on the river and you're not really looking at the way the river's going. You're just looking at where the next restaurant is, or the next camping place where you could camp, or whatever. So I was looking at the wind, and I was getting really quite excited, and really it was really powering me on, because I saw that in 2 days the wind was changing. So instead of coming from the left-hand side, it was then going to go straight up. So I was getting really positive about this, and it was like, it was really doing me good. But then what did the river do? It turned left over to Holland. So this wind that was then going north was also coming from the left. And that's how the 160 kilometers of paddling on the right happened. And then you realize that at one point. And then one of the techniques I had was, when you know that it's going to be difficult, I had this thing of setting my, no breakfast till 20. So I'd have my breakfast when I'd done 20 kilometers. And then just to put the last screw into the resilience training, you get to 19 and you say, no, I'm going to do 22. Yeah. And that sort of, I've heard that from David Goggins as well. He does things like that, but that kind of came naturally. It was sort of like, I'm going to have to do more. So I'm going to do more now. And it was kind of, so you're doing this 22, but it's actually like, it's your 20, and you're translating it into 22 and saying, well, it's just like doing 20. And at the end of the day, when you've done your 3 different things, then you've done 68 instead of 60 kilometers,
Yeah.
So that worked quite well, but the water was getting slower and slower, because then you've got this big free flowing 800 kilometers, and then suddenly it gets slow, it gets wider. So it gets wider. The flow is it's a larger mass of water, so it's actually flowing, or hardly flowing at all. Then you have a couple of locks coming, and then there was headwind for 2 or 3 days before I got to Rotterdam. So I had this situation where I was thinking, okay, I'm going to get to Rotterdam today, and it took another 3 days. So
that can play with your mind.
Yeah, that does. Especially as you've done 850 kilometers, and then the last 150 kilometers takes 4 days, and you was like, no, I went into a hotel 20 kilometers before Rotterdam, which is so frustrating. And that day was, I was talking about the one day with the portages. This day was actually harder than that, because I was paddling on my knees. My knees were bleeding. Everything was hurting, because paddling on your knees is no fun. It's not, if you've got a double paddle, it might be a little bit better, because you can be a bit more efficient. You're changing side. It was paddling one paddle stroke and then changing over to the other side, because the wind was so hard. And it was 7.5 hours for 19 kilometers, I think. And I didn't actually stop paddling at all, because it was I'm going to get to Rotterdam, and there's no way you're going to. There's no way you could. I could have paddled through the night, but at one point I would have just fell in the water,
popped.
So I had this situation where it then got to the point where I was moving backwards while paddling. And I think there are no locks after that. That was after the last locks, and I think there's a certain current there, although it's...
Is there a tide?
I think there is a
tide. Tidal?
I think it is. There's a minimum tide. I think there was a little bit of tide going against me, because the wind wasn't that bad, but I just wasn't moving. It's incredible. And I saw this hotel, and I thought, okay, this is second time I'm going to go into a hotel, because it's just, I've bloody well earned this, but I couldn't actually get into the hotel was 50, 60, 100 meters away from me over the entrance to the harbour, and I couldn't get to it. So I actually had to get out on the harbour slip and walk 3 kilometers around to get to the hotel that's 100 meters away. Because, it was like, I had to actually admit I can't,
Yeah.
So, that was actually mentally, that was the hardest day. The other day with the 11 portages was, physically the hardest, also mentally hard, but that was absolutely, you're not getting anywhere, you've done 900 kilometers and, you're just not moving. It's very, very frustrating. So, yeah.
But you got there, you got to Rotterdam.
Yeah.
And what was it like sort of actually drive? I mean, if there's one advantage, if you're looking at 3 days for the last X kilometers in a positive way, at least you can see the end arriving.
Yeah.
And it's not just, snap your fingers and it's all over.
No.
So just tell us about arriving there in Rotterdam after really fronting out for those last few days.
That last day was, very weird because you have this big idea of arriving and this amazing, I've done it and stuff. And that didn't really happen. I was in this hotel and the hotel was amazing because it was actually in the harbor and it had a dock around the edge of the hotel. So I could walk right out of my door and my board was docked in the water directly in front of my room. So I could go straight out and paddle straight away. It was looking like there was going to be fog. And, you don't want to be on that, in that massive ships and stuff when there's fog, going and stuff. So, I was trying to get the right window between the fog and then the wind coming up about 12 o'clock. So, luckily, it wasn't any fog. Got down there and started going down. Suddenly, there were these water buses. They go about 30, 40 kilometers an hour, and they were throwing a double wave. So you've got a big rolling wave that comes in front, and the one behind it breaks. So you're just recovering from the first wave, and then the other one breaks over you. But they did actually. I noticed they were slowing down for me. That's kind of, I was saying to SUP Junkie, that's a Dutch thing. I don't think they would do that in Germany. They would just say, it's your fault if you fall in, And it wouldn't have been that bad.
The British would put the pedal down just for the amusement factor of seeing you wobble.
Yeah. I was going in there and there was all these incredible, it's very big there and incredibly industrial. I mean, Rotterdam is way more industrial than, or at least the center of it is more, there's much more industry there, to do with the river and stuff and very big ships and stuff. And, so you had these, water buses and then you have the big ships as well. And you've got the big rolling waves and you've got the ships and all this stuff going on. And then the water taxis, I got near enough, like 5 or 6 kilometers from the center. And there were these water taxis and they're just, they're like little tugs. They're just all motor. And I think, 5 or 6 people can fit into them and they go up to 60 kilometers an hour. And the way they're going, they haven't got much of a big wave, but because they're going so fast, they have to brake. And when they brake, they throw such a wave. It was unbelievable. And, that was kind of like a shock. And I was like, oh no, what are we gonna, I was actually thinking about getting out. And I've never actually gotten in that situation before, but I managed to somehow get through, got stopped by the police and they asked me, how far I'm going because you're not actually allowed to go further than the Erasmus Bridge, which is the center. And it's also pretty much the 1,000-kilometer mark for the Rhine. So I got in there and it was, I was looking for a place to get out and it wasn't that easy. You can go into these, harbors. There was a maritime museum there, but you're not actually allowed to paddle in there. So I actually got out. It was 4 meters high. It was a slippery metal, ladder. And trying to get up. I mean, these water taxis were coming in and they were throwing waves, but they were actually slowing down for me. I noticed that they were slowing down and I noticed that after I got out. So I got out. It was kind of an anticlimax because I was arguing with the police and trying to get out and stuff. And it was like standing up there and I didn't have this amazing, I've got there, this
brass bands and
no, there was no one there.
Local mayor.
There was no one there.
All of that.
I was standing there.
Freedom of the city.
No one was cheering.
No one cared.
No.
Yeah.
So that was kind of anticlimax, and I did. I got out and got all the stuff out, and then one of these taxis came in and went the normal speed, And I was standing there looking at it, and the wave came almost up the whole of the 4 meters. It came up like that. So I thought, well, good that these Dutch guys are just so caring and empathetic, you know. So you're going at 4 meters, and you've got 3 bags on the board. You've got to get out, got the board out. You've got to get the board out. You've got to get your paddle up and all this stuff. So you're going up and down 3 or 4 times. It was like, it's just trying to do it as fast as possible without falling in. And so that was kind of anticlimactic. I did a reel on Facebook, or on Instagram, and it was a bit half-hearted because I hadn't connected yet, and it was weird. And I walked into Rotterdam to get something to eat, and arranged with SUP Junkie to do a live. And a friend of mine's Tim Cruiser, who's a big adventure paddler, he sent me a text because he'd seen the reel, and he said, "Brilliant that you got there and everything." And then it was like all the emotions came out, and I was sort of like walking down the middle of the street in Amsterdam. There's a woman came up to me, "Why are you crying?" And I said, I'm just I don't know, I'm brilliant because I've just paddled 1,000 kilometers. And she gave me a hug and said, "Oh, I'm glad about that," you know, because she was concerned about me. And then it was like, you know, then I was grounded. It was actually I actually arrived. But it was very weird because all this weird, you know, going through there and kind of an anticlimax. But then it all came out. And then I had a lovely live with SUP Junkie, and we talked about it. And I was then, you know, properly grounded and like back in the real world again. But it's kind of, you know, you're on your own all that time. You know, you've got lots of contact with people and lots of lovely people I met who I stayed at their house, and they made me food and stuff. And that was incredible. The first person I met in Holland, I talked to in Holland, invited me to stay at his house. And that was the kind of support that was going on there. You know, we talked about, you know, with SUP 12 and all the community spirit there and stuff. And it was, people want to be a part of the journey. And that's so amazing. That's really nice. You know?
And that's a really good thing to sort of finish off on, because as you say, you had lots of kind people who all wanted to find out about what it was that you were doing. I know that you were treated to a number of cappuccinos and beers and meals and various other things on the way down. And I guess, you know, you've been through all the grit and the hardship and the planning and the logistical stuff. And ultimately, you know, you do it for your personal experience.
Yeah.
There was a mountaineer who I sort of encountered recently who was talking about feeding the rat. You've got to spend time feeding the rat, and you give the rat a very big meal when you're paddling 1,000 kilometers down, so much so that the rat is probably satisfied for a little while. But it's all of that sort of that mental benefit you get from spending time on the water and spending time with other people. And I know that in terms of you know, men's mental health and everyone's mental health, frankly, is a feature of discussion, quite rightly, because in the past it was all kept away, but people are discussing it a lot more. And you're involved in something called SUP Against Darkness. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that initiative?
It's the owner of the Bajau company who does the tents, the sleeping on the water tents. And we connected quite a lot, and I did a podcast with him. They have like a podcast where they drink beer and talk about stand-up paddling, which is quite a good combination.
That's where I've been going wrong. This is where I've been going wrong.
I think you need. Well, I don't think you're going wrong. I think your podcast is brilliant. I've heard
more beer, perhaps.
Maybe it would be an improvement. Who knows? We'll have to try it.
We'll have to try it.
And I connected with him, and he did a pack list for multi-day paddles, and he put it online, and then I put some stuff on top of that, and he said, "Hey, you're so crazy, you have to use my tent." So we connected quite well on that, and then they did a podcast at some point and said, because he used to run a SUP station, and he noticed that he'd have families coming to hire SUPs, and they would be, you know, arguing with each other. There'd be like stress, you know, family stress going on, and then they'd come and they'd hire us up for an hour, and then they'd come back completely chilled. And he noticed that so often that you know, realized, and you know, of course, paddling yourself, and you know, having a bad day and then going for an hour on the water and coming back and realizing, you know, there's something about this. And, he also read the Blue Mind book. So, they wanted to start it, and we actually grounded you have to form a group in, an official, club in Germany to be able to do something like that. We actually did that while I was on the tour. So, one of the days I had to cut short to get to a camping place that had Wi-Fi, so we could actually have the meeting online to get it going. But it's basically about, I don't think, we're going to be as normal people. We're not going to be, saving people from dire situations. But I think it's very relevant for people who are on the mend from, they're getting to the point where they can get out of the house. They can then have, and that point is very critical to give people situations where they're getting positive vibes. And it's so easy. All you have to do is take them on the water. You take them in a safe situation, you take them on water with a SUP, and you paddle around. They learn how to paddle. They're completely distracted from the rest of their life. What do you do at the end? You lie down on the board and enjoy the sunset. It's predestined, I think, to, you got you were talking about the surf therapy for PTSD and that kind of thing. Yeah. So we're not quite sure what we're going to do with it. And we're all busy people, but we're on the way to doing it, and I'm supporting it through my tour and any way I can, actually,
Well, that's brilliant. And, if you're at the start of your journey with that sort of organisation, there are plenty of existing organisations, be it SUP ones or surf mental health charities that I'm sure would share their experiences and advice with you. Yeah. So there's lots of advice out there. Yeah. So, just to finish off before we get to your audio diary, and I can see that this is going to may well be a record-breaking length of an episode. We may well we may well be entering Joe Rogan territory in terms of length, but we shall see. Yeah. But I also noticed from one of your cast interviews that you happen to be also a DJ, and I know that you have an aspiration for a waterborne SUP rave. So I guess my question is, what is your genre of music, and how advanced are your plans?
I've already done one. The post was about doing it again. Okay. We had I don't know if you know the Surf Rider Foundation. They're international. I think they were started in Australia, and our chapter of it, which is in Mannheim here, I had the idea to do a rave on SUP. I was, DJing on a big SUP. Which isn't original. Other people have done it before, but it kind of came together with this demonstration that we wanted to do in Mannheim. We got this window where the locks were being repaired, so there were no ships coming through. And we actually managed it with 320 emails with the German bureaucracy. And that was including changing from Mannheim to Heidelberg, because we had to do it around the corner. So, Heidelberg wasn't responsible for it anymore. It was then Mannheim. So they had to, and they don't talk to each other. So it was, so I actually managed to do that. And it was such a beautiful experience, because two of my favorite things combined, DJing and SUP. We were only allowed to have 50 people. They said, because they only had one safety boat. And there was the equivalent of the RNLI that was there, and the police as well, the water police. So we actually managed to do that, and that was just so amazing. But to get those stars to align again would probably be quite difficult. But it was amazing. We had, it was like 50 people dancing on the boards, for 2 hours on the Rhine, on the Neckar, actually. In the middle of Mannheim, which was absolutely brilliant, with all the people cheering on the side, and it was a really nice day, and it was incredible that actually, it was amazing that happened. It was just so, there were so many things working against it, and it actually worked. So yeah, one of the high points of my last 3 or 4 years, I would say.
Amazing. Any video of that?
Yeah, there is. I can link you to that. Yeah. And in answer to the music, I'm kind of a house DJ, but in the last few years, I've been doing more open format, which means, playing the best music from the 70s, 80s, 90s, thousands. But in a kind of a house DJ way, mixing the songs.
Amazing.
Which are, yeah.
Amazing, brilliant, excellent. Well, we'll see whether we can magic something out of SUP 12. You're probably not going to be in any shape to raise your arms after that.
Probably not.
If last year's anything to go by, but great to chat as always. Thanks ever so much for sharing your experience, and we will play you out with your audio diary, or a section of the audio diary, and obviously we'll share the links in the show notes. So please, brilliant. If you're listening, please keep listening to Duncan actually on the water, look forward to seeing you at SUP 12 in 2025.
Yeah, thank you very much, Simon. It was a pleasure to be on a podcast where you got people like Bart de Zwart and Chris Burtish and all those guys who, we talk about resilience and we talk about planning and we talk about going the extra mile. But, it's just incredible to be on your podcast and being able to share my experience, because that's what it's about. It's about inspiring, and it's about being inspired, and it's about getting it out there, and that's what you do. And I think that's brilliant.
Brilliant. Well, you're very welcome, and look forward to seeing you on the water.
Yeah.
And here's Duncan.
Hi, Simon. Just walking down to the river, doing a test, my big Rhine trip, and trying out different things. I've got a new GPS, so I'm testing that out today, which is all part of the process of being confident about what you're doing and why you're doing it, and making sure I can sleep at night up to the time when I'm going to leave, because I know everything's safe and stowed away and shipshape, and part of that process. I'm also trying out I've got a belt from Palm, which I have affixed my rest tube PFD to. Okay, I'm going over one of the longer portages over a lock in Laufenburg, and talking about a portage over a lock in England. 10 kick kind of Grand Union Canal, 72-foot lock. Go up a bit, go down a bit, maybe a couple of steps, and you're done. Just pushing the board uphill, because if you get the water, which is quite easy, push up to the weir itself, and then after the weir it goes up, and I'm now about 2 meters above the water, and I know there's a lift here, but I didn't realise that it was this one. There's like going on there, so it might be the lift doesn't work. We shall see. It works. The lift goes down. You have to like open a little shed, put the main switch on, put the motor switch on, put the electric switch on, and about 5 other switches, and then you can put your board on the platform and run it down the 45 steps into the water. Of course, you have to be careful, because just getting it in, it goes under the water. You have to secure your board. So you have to walk up and down a couple of times. Well, it's still there. It looks like it's working. Okay. If it's working, it's cool. If it's not, I will be using lots of words. Day 3. This morning I met with Tanja Ecker, awesome paddler, the German machine. She did some photos, and we did a little interview, and she did a drone shot and all that stuff, and we had a nice chat about the Loire 750, unbelievable race in France, where the water was incredibly high, she said, and they were doing like 5 kilometers in a day, and sounded pretty awesome. And because I was hurrying to get there, and it was a Sunday, so I didn't buy any food, and I didn't go to a restaurant, so I was living on the meager remains, those little Italian sausages and
So evening meal, and I ran out of water as well. Tanya kindly brought me 4 litres of water, so that was okay. Now I've got to paddle about 12 kilometres to the nearest supermarket, because where Tanya lives on the Rhine, there was nothing at all. Yeah, got to push on through a bit. But that's the kind of things that happen on the river. After that, I can get out and go up to the supermarket, and I hope, beyond hope, that they have cappuccino, because then I'll be really in a good mood. Got a very high goal set today. Not quite sure about that, but everything's possible. Up to now, I've broken all my records for the stretches that I've done here before. Oh, and by the way, I'm enjoying it intensely. It is absolutely okay. Chilling a bit now. Lying back on my big bag and got my feet up. Done about 25k. Fairly late. Don't know what time it is. It's 2 o'clock. 25k at 2 o'clock is rookie numbers. But that doesn't matter, because considering what went on yesterday and how much I went over the distance that I should have been really doing without eating, or with eating too little. I had breakfast on an awesome beach behind the Rheinburg weir. Managed to get to a supermarket, had possibly the worst cappuccino I've ever had in my whole life, but that doesn't matter. After that, I went down to the next weir, got around there, and there was a camping site, and I got on there and had a good cappuccino, a piece of cheesecake, and possibly the best lemonade I've ever tasted. It's like a Swiss lemonade that comes out of the mountains. It's kind of like this. They have this Skiwasser, ski water, that they have, but it was similar to that. See how it is in the evening. The problem is that the heat doesn't dissipate in the evening. It actually has to get dark to get cooler, and that's about 8:45, which I discovered yesterday when I was coming in to the place where I was going to meet Tanya. So I actually was paddling into the sunset, which was pretty awesome. I just went over the worst weir on the Rhine, I would think, were the worst I've had until now. And it was actually okay. It wasn't too bad. I cracked my fin a bit, but that's why we have spare fins and whatever. So just coming into Basel, got about 15 kilometers an hour headwind, but that's okay, because I'm wet. If I wet down my hat and the breeze comes over me, it's actually cooling me down and making it actually possible to paddle at all, because it's pretty dire. But yeah, I was just went past the harbour here, where they fill up with oil, and there was a big oil tanker there, and there was a guy, kayaker, paddling next to me, and the tanker pooped his horn. It was really loud. It's surprising how many people just don't know the rules on the river, and I think he kept paddling, and he was pretty close to the ship, and then the ship beeped his horn. I stopped, and the ship beeped his horn 3 times, which means get out the fucking way. And I was surprised that this guy was, I don't know, just not realize. I mean, the ships are absolutely enormous, and if they put their engine on and start going, and they're going down with the flow, they take ages to stop. When they're really in the flow on the Rhine, they can take half a kilometer to stop. At this point, he was fairly static, but there you go. The things that happen on the river. Coming out to Basel, it's kilometer portage, and you have to go to the harbour master and beg the key. If he's bad tempered, he doesn't give it to you. And he'll probably be bad tempered with me, because last time I came up here, I stopped all the shipping by going into the wrong channel. Probably shouldn't admit that, but yeah, I hope he doesn't remember me. So I'm camping on the island, on the Isteiner Schwellen, the waterfalls. It's absolutely awesome here. I felt not overheated for the first time this day. It went into the
at waterfall and just like stayed in for about 15 minutes. And it's about 18 degrees or something. So it just feels so good. And I do that every morning too, because I'm always on the water. So always go into the water in the morning and in the evening as well. Kind of like a wellness thing. It just makes me feel good. It's part of nature and it's awesome. Tomorrow I'm going to see how far I come. I know that when I get to Breisach that I can buy stuff there and everything. And kind of getting to the point where it'd be nice to have a real shower, but I don't really need one because I'm in the water every day in clean, refreshing water, so it's not really a problem. Yeah, we shall see what happens tomorrow. Just having my breakfast on the island at the Steiner Schwelle, getting packed up. I had a really good night's sleep, which didn't expect to because there was a lot of thunder and lightning and stuff at the beginning, but I actually had a really good night's sleep, which I could really have done with, because sleep deprivation and heat exhaustion is not a good combination. So I'm feeling really good now. I've already done 3 of the rapids and going to get down to Breisach today, and then I can fuel up a bit, get all the stuff I need. I need to get water on the way. I seem to be constantly running out of water, which is no surprise with the heat. And I need to definitely get fueled up on all the stuff I need, because I will be in the wilderness again tonight. So we shall see.
There are certain things that make me happy, and my river fin is one of them at the moment. I'm going down the stretch where there's 14 rapids, and I've done about six or seven now. Every time I come down to a rapid, it just reduces the stress factor. A journey, you desperately don't want to get hurt, because it can ruin the journey completely. It can mean the end of the journey. So this is just such an awesome product. And I'm really happy about it. It's getting down here at about 9 to 10 kilometers an hour. I just did the first hour, 10 kilometers, and going down to meet Miriam from Light Venture, who's going to bring me a couple of spare parts and some water, which will be cool, because I'm always running out of water. And getting down to Breisach, which is where I've normally stayed the night, but I'm going further this time, because actually I want to get to Rotterdam faster without stressing myself. And yeah, I've had an intense 3 days. It's funny looking up into the tall trees and seeing all the cormorants eyeing me hungrily, hoping. It seems like they look like small vultures. So it looks like they're waiting for me to fall in and die so they can eat me. I guess that's just my imagination, but it's quite amusing. Lots of storks here, and normally there are lots of swans here, but I haven't seen any today.
Got another 10 kilometers to Breisach, then it would be about 50 kilometers today. And I'm just going to do a reset, clean my clothes a bit, have the first shower for 4 days. And just tank up a bit with sleep and with food, and eat as much as I possibly can, and ready myself for really going for it to get to Heidelberg, Mannheim, where I'm taking maybe one night, maybe a whole day rest. I'm not sure if I'll need it. So I want to get through the rest of the locks up to Iffelheim. At Breisach, I'm at kilometer 225. The last lock on the Rhine is kilometer 334. And Mannheim, where we get out and my wife will come and collect me, is kilometer 424. So from here it's 200 kilometers, which should be easily doable in 3 days, because most of it is without locks. But we shall see. So I want to gear up for that a bit, and I've got to buy some more provisions, getting up to near Strasbourg, but I won't get as far as Strasbourg tomorrow. And then it's kind of a little bit of wilderness there, so I need to have enough getting water is okay, but the rest of it can be difficult. And the supermarkets are too far from the river, and all those mini problems that we have on our adventures.
So I'm in Breisach in the youth hostel, and I'm going to go and get something to eat. Being in the youth hostel means that I can get off really early. I don't have to pack my tent. I don't have to do anything like that. Just getting my board packed up. So I will be getting off at latest at 6 on the water, if not earlier, depending on how I feel from sleep. Yeah, feeling good about taking the time to rest and to gather myself so that I can get to Mannheim in 3 days. Maybe a little bit less, have to see. But taking a bit of a strategical decision there, rather than just going and then finding yourself without water or going too long in the heat or whatever. So if I get off really early, then I can get about 30, 40k, maybe more, and then have a really large meal rather than just eating small snacks, and have a half an hour sleep. And that's a really good strategy because then you can get more. Regeneration is very difficult, very important. And you notice in that situation that then you can do more in the evening as well. It's cooling down a little bit, but it doesn't cool down that much. So it's getting up to about 32, 33 degrees during the day. And it cools down to about 28, 25, maybe about 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So then I can get a few Ks in the evening as well. So very tiring stretch, not much flow. Going on the side arms a lot because you have a choice of going on the main Rhine and going over the big weirs. And the big weirs, sometimes it's just so difficult. You have to get up a 45-degree wall with all your stuff without breaking your fin and causing bodily damage. And well, I haven't done the whole of the stretch before. You have either the big wheels or you go down on the side arm, and then you have all these small wheels to go over, and then it's up 12 steps, down 12 steps. So I've decided to just take my luggage off and walk up with the board, put the board on the wagon, and then put the luggage back on, and just do it like that because I have got this new click system where I can get my bag. It takes about 20 seconds to get off the board and the 2 bags. The rucksack stays on there, and I can carry the board up quite easily like that, throw the stuff on the wagon and go down to the next one, and then walk it down again, click them back on. And that's actually faster and easier than trying to get my loaded board up and down. So from here it's 200 kilometers to home, which is I can get out at Mannheim. My wife Stephanie will come and pick me up, and I'll spend either 1 night or 2 nights at home, depending on my mindset, basically. Nice thing that happened yesterday. I saw something swimming in the water, and it looked like the head of a frog or something. And I got close, and it was actually a lovely little grass snake swimming along. And he kind of came towards me, and I thought he was going to attack me, but he was actually trying to get onto the board. Apparently, they do that quite a lot. There's quite a few videos of that. It's quite amusing. But I was too fast for him, so he just carried on. It's really beautiful the way they swim. It's really amazing seeing all these different animals and stuff just going past a big cruise ship. They all seem to start here in Breisach. And it's quite often the cruise ships that I see here, the Viking ones and a few others, I also see in Heidelberg as well. They go down the Rhine to Mannheim, and then they go up the Neckar to show people the castle, for example. Okay, looking forward to a good day today. It's going to be a little bit cooler. There are quite a lot of clouds. There is thunder and lightning forecast, but only above me in Germany. I seem to be in a lucky little pocket. Let's see. Just getting into the water again from the second weir. I was quite happy that they've got ramps here. Now I'm looking at this one. It's like someone deliberately made it as rough as possible to make sure your board falls off your trolley when you go down there. Okay, got my board down without it falling over. That was only due to my immense experience and skill and swearing like you wouldn't believe. And I managed it. You cannot be serious. I just walked past the entry point, the ramp, because it's totally overgrown with bushes, and walked completely past it, went like about 200-300 meters past it, and came back and now found it. It looks like someone just threw a bunch of stones there, and there's like at the bottom you can kind of get into the water. When I met Tim Cruiser last year on the river, he was doing the Rhine. If you don't know who Tim Cruiser is, Google him. Yeah, and Tim had just gone through this section when I met him, and he was in a bad mood. And now I know why. He was with another guy, and they were actually helping each other get over the weirs, but he was still like so. So doing it on my own, I don't think I need to complain about anything. I just take it as it goes. Okay, got down the 10th weir, and the lemonade is empty. But I just realised I was really lucky that the sun wasn't actually shining while I was doing most of these weirs. It's just come out now, so I'm going to go paddle off a bit, and when the water's deep enough, we'll get into the water to cool down a little bit. Definitely on the list of things to buy the next time in civilization, waterproof sun cream, as my left foot is really sunburnt and the skin's flaking off, and so don't need any details on that. And my left hand as well, because it gets most sun. Because the directions change a little bit now. The back of my legs are getting sunburnt as well. I tried to get waterproof sun cream last night, but by the time I got to the chemist, it was closed. Just have to grin and bear it, and put cream on it as often as possible. So yeah, status for today. Okay. I do believe someone's trying to test me. There's a storm coming up on the left-hand side, on the French side, and it's throwing wind at me about 15, 20 kilometers an hour with gusts of like 30 or 40. So when the gusts come, I just stand still. There's not much flow here. I hope the storm doesn't come over me. Maybe I can paddle fast enough to get out of it. But been hearing thunder from the left-hand side for about the last 2 hours, and couldn't see anything, but now it seems to be coming over this way, but it looks like I'm paddling out of it, I hope. The other thing that happened is there are lots of breakwaters in the water. Because the water's quite high, you don't see them, and some of the times I'm quite good at judging it. Some of the times the rocks are hidden in the weeds. I'll paddle through the weeds, think, oh, that's okay. I just went through one, caught with a fin. I'm quite good at saving myself from, I'm used to catching a fin and saving myself and fall on the bags at the front, which is actually quite cool. But I whacked my paddle into my face, like you do. And got blood all over my wonderful light venture, pure white, pure paddling UV shirt. I've got a high water warning this morning in my water app, and I think what happened is there's been a lot of rain in the Alps and further up on the Rhine. Constance on the lake, there was a lot of rain coming down, and I think there's high water coming down, and it's pushing the water pressure of the water on the main Rhine is pushing the water back into the sidearm, which is pretty weird. So I was paddling against current and the wind. The wind's died down a little bit at the moment. It looks like I'm going to get past the storm. So getting onto the Rhine, I hope I can use the flow a little bit and do a few Ks. So the wind changed. Got out onto the Rhine, and suddenly I had diagonal chop from the back. So I've basically been downwinding out of the storm for the last 15 minutes, which is pretty awesome. There's a second storm front on the left-hand side. You can hear the thunder. Behind me, it's raining pretty heavily. can see it in the sky, but I don't think it's moving in this direction. Well, I hope it isn't. On the left-hand side of me, there's lots of thunderheads. So I'm kind of going parallel to it at the moment. I guess because the wind's prevailing in that direction. That's the way the wind should have been today, according to the forecast, but it's cooled down quite a lot because it's only about 18, 20 degrees now. So as long as I still have the strength, I'll try to use that. So yeah.
Okay, we are at weir number 7. I was up at the big weir. I've just got to the second small one on a new stretch of the sidearm of the many, and I got to the end of the weir and decided to have lunch and got my mattress out, slept for 3/4 of an hour, and when I got up, the kiosk was open, so I could get a cappuccino and a lemonade. And having a lemonade after drinking 6 or 7 liters of water is just absolute ecstasy. It's like, because you've got all this bland water, which is good, and you need to be drinking pure water and nothing else. And it's just like taste orgasm. And I even got one lemonade and took it with me for this evening. I was getting quite bad-tempered and actually really getting down on myself because I'd only done, I was at 12 o'clock and I'd only done 26 kilometers. I suddenly realized before I went to sleep, it's the 5th day. And the 5th day it's different because the adrenaline makes you react differently. But if you're just doing something that's very, very hard and it's very hot and stuff, you have this point where your body is trying to tell you not to do it anymore. Stop it. This is dangerous. This is you're endangering yourself. I'm kind of pressuring myself to get to Heidelberg by Friday. It's today, Thursday, and Friday. We're paddling, and that's quite a push considering all the weirs here. So I'll see how it goes today, and not pressure myself too much. If it's Saturday, it's Saturday, and yeah. But feeling better about myself now. Just leaving the yacht club. I was so happy to be able to stay here overnight. I was paddling through the storm. It was actually raining quite a lot as I was getting here, and I could see the yacht club, and I've been here before, and as I was paddling here I could see it from quite a long way away, and I thought, okay, it's about another kilometer. I started paddling again and look at the 100-meter posts on the side. I thought, okay, another 10. Okay, paddle another kilometer, and I looked at them again, and it was still a long way away. It was actually 3.5 kilometers away, and I could see it quite easily. I could see it because it's quite a lot of boats there. So kind of paddling against the wind with lots of waves and raining. And I paddled and the last kilometer the sun came out, and it was just a nice moment to get there. And I got into the yacht club and docked and walked up to the place, and they actually recognized me from last time and said, "Oh, you want to stay here tonight?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Yeah, no problem. You can go. We've even got food for you. Here's a beer. Here's some lemonade." And I was just so happy to be, because you've had this really long, hard day where you think, "Oh, I've got to put my tent up now," and I don't know where. I'm gonna have to cook up the dry food. I think I had one sandwich left, and you get there and there's people who are just welcoming, and we talked for hours about journeys on the river and all the stuff that they do as well, because they're, of course, with their motorboats, they're going on journeys around here, going down to Constance and going up to the North Sea and whatever. So that was amazing, really nice experience. And rested, even had a shower. Again, that's 2 showers on consecutive nights. I don't think I've ever had that before on a journey.
So it's almost luxury now. So now I'm ready for the new challenge, which is almost 70k today, so that I can do 90k tomorrow. Got sort of an inkling that might not work, but you never know. Okay, but through the last portage from this section. It was 4 this morning. My Garmin's telling me it took an hour and 50 minutes, and I've gone a grand total of 6 kilometers. But although those are rookie numbers, it's actually fairly relaxed now. I'm just taking it as it comes and gradually accepting the possibility that I won't be doing 70k today. Pains me to know that. I'm just coming out onto the Rhine again and navigate through the weed. Lots of weed here. It's the same phenomenon here. There's a back current going into Meerbull, although the current should be going in the other direction. So it's just an indication that high water's coming. I had a warning as well. It's not going to be particularly high. What it could mean is I'll be flying down and I get back into the current, which would be pretty cool. It can make 1 or 2 kilometers an hour difference in your average speed, which would be pretty awesome. Just coming out of the camping site in Kehl, which is directly over the river from Strasbourg, and just getting back down the over the dike. Otherwise, you have to go all the way around. Just getting my stuff. Luckily, I've got my trolley. Yeah, that was quite easy compared to some place. But it's not very far to the river, and coming down now. I decided to stay in Strasbourg and chill a bit, have a holiday from my holiday. Yesterday it was five weirs directly in the morning, and then a few more. But now out of the small weirs, and it's just 2 more big ones. And the second one is Iver time, which means that I'm then out on the free-flowing water, which is what I've been waiting for. When I've got there, I've gone through the boot camp, and then I can do the normal stuff. So, as I described yesterday, it's not that easy, and it's really pushing myself, and happy with what I've done. So I got here yesterday and decided to chill. Got into the camping site and put my tent up. And then I tried to paddle over to Strasbourg, because I've always wanted to paddle through Strasbourg. It's an amazing town, and it's full of water. There are 2 rivers that go through, and then the canal. And I unfortunately went to the wrong lock, and you can't get around it. There's no physical way of getting around it. And of course, we're not allowed to use the locks as stand-up paddlers. So unfortunately, I had to give up on that one, but I paddled around a little bit on the river and had a couple of chats with people with my bad French, and had a nice meal, and managed to get all the stuff. So yeah, not really good planning there, but there you go. The possession of Strasbourg changed between the Germans and the French 37 times. So there's quite a lot of history there, and a lot of love and a lot of hate going on there. Just checking Google Maps, and the dragonfly came and landed on the screen and made the map move. It didn't stay long, but it was pretty. I guess he was looking for somewhere to perch, because the wind's going a bit amusing.
So yesterday was completely awesome. It started off at Strasbourg. The water was really slow, like treacle, because of the locks up there. But it was like, when we're going to do some Ks. The portages there were just unbelievable, because you have to come out of the Rhine, and the river is much lower down than the Rhine. So the first time I went down a really steep slope, which was okay, and getting into the water was like muddy and everything. And the second one was, I think, 50 steps, I just went down the steps, so that was pretty cool. And then I met a friend of mine, and he brought me a cappuccino and beer and a pretzel, and I ate there. And at that point, I was about 45k. And then I was kind of into my second wind, and the river was flowing as well. So I had like a double whammy effect. And I was going and going and going. And then at some point, I realized I was getting kind of near to Karlsruhe, and I called Udo Souza, who said he was going to film me with his drone, and that actually worked. And he said, "Okay, I'll come down. I'll meet you there and there." And I said, "Okay, I'll be there in about an hour and a half." And I was way faster. I was doing I had a 4 pace of 4, which means I was doing 15 kilometers an hour, because I was just throwing the paddle into the water. It was just like it was the SUP equivalent of runner's high, and I was just like so happy to be back on the river where it's actually moving. On the way there were lots of things going on the bank, people drinking and eating and having a good time. And on the last one, these people called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing? Come over and have a beer." And I looked at my time and I thought, I've got time for that. I'm gonna take advantage of this. And I went over there and they bought me a bit. And we chatted for about 15 minutes, and it was just so funny. It was absolutely hilarious. We were laughing all the time, and I downed my shandy in about 30 seconds. And they said, "Oh, do you want another one?" I said, "Yeah, okay, I'll have another one." Normally I don't drink alcohol, but I was just in such a ultimate high. I just didn't even notice at all, and it was just like, this tastes so good, and I can feel it doing me good as well in my body. So I got down there to meet Udo, and he filmed me while there were ships going by, and it was like Red Bull heavy water conditions, and he actually filmed me doing that as well. And I felt so confident because I've been on the water for like 6 days, and I'm feeling so confident on my board and with my paddle and everything. And that was absolutely awesome. It was unbelievable. And then it was starting to get dark, so I had to do the other 5 to top off the 80 kilometers, because it was just, sometimes you just have to do it. So that was awesome. Sleeping on a bank, had a really good night's sleep, much better than on the camping site. It's such a different feeling, such a different vibe.
Enjoying the 55 kilometer paddle from Karlsruhe to Mannheim. Going to meet up with some friends later, pretty soon actually, and taking a break tomorrow at home, washing my stuff, and doing a bit of a reset. So I'm here in Mannheim. It's Monday the 19th of August. Just pumped my board up, and I'm kind of raring to go. Yesterday I was knackered. I was repacking, and I've shed a little bit of weight. There were things that were annoying me, and thinking, I need to trust my equipment. I don't need to take everything double. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Going to Mainz today, which is 72 kilometers from here. And if I'm feeling good, then I will go for the 100 today. But I'm pretty knackered from all those locks, and I need to check what's going on. And I will probably have a midday sleep after I've eaten, and see how it's going to go. It's not going to be too hot today, so I can go a little bit without having that dreaded heat exhaustion in the middle of the day. So I'm feeling really good. Let's go, Rotterdam. Done 50k. Just had a nice sleep on the beach, which is really, really relaxing. So I'm going to be getting off to Mainz, and I'm meeting someone there to have an evening meal, maybe overnight at the boathouse, which is pretty cool, because then I can have a shower and stuff. It's not necessary. Okay, yeah, nice day so far. I got to Mainz in about 11 hours, headwind all the way, but behind the bridge 80 kilometers, and completely knackered. Wasn't too hot, it was okay, it was good. I didn't have to throw myself in the water all the time, and it was really nice. A nice meal, and I'm gonna sleep. So I'm on the middle Rhine, big hills, big almost mountains left and right, and lots of ships and it's a little bit tight. Sometimes you're going to wait here for a while until both ships have gone past and whatever. I'm at Rhine kilometer 538, got about another 17, 18 to a very nice camping site, which is right directly on the Rhine. Just past the Lorelei, which is where the mermaid who sings out to the ships and makes them sink and whatever. I could go a lot further, but I'm gonna chill a bit because yesterday was a hard day. I'm still feeling the all the locks and portages in my bones. It sounds a bit weird taking a rest day only doing 55 kilometers, but that's the reality of the situation. We have this thing that we're doing called SUP Against Darkness, and we're doing the meeting tonight. So I need to be somewhere, in the middle of an adventure on the Rhine, and you have to find somewhere with Wi-Fi and a good connection so that you can take part in this meeting, because I'm one of the founding members. It's an association that SUP Against Darkness, SAD for short, and it's about helping people basically with depression and anxiety, PTSD, by taking them on the water. It's quite a simple thing. It's not a therapy thing, although there will be a therapy element there. But we're just trying to get something going because it's really important. I was just waving to one of the cruise ships, of which there are many. It's quite awesome because you wave and then 200 people wave back and ask you where you're going and get big round eyes when you say you're going to Rotterdam. And it was really funny. I was thinking, you're waving down to me. You're on this luxury cruise ship going up and down the Rhine, but you have no idea how awesome it is down here on the water. Waving to this funny guy on this paddleboard, wondering what he's up to, and you'll never know. Or you might do, but I don't know. You probably won't. And it's such a contrast in lifestyles. So kind of weird, but funny too. Sitting here on the corner in Hetzenach. I started off this morning and the wind was absolutely pelting down against me. And I thought, okay, not going to be much today. But it's important to check your maps and check your wind direction and the flow of the river, because it was coming out of the west and it was pretty much against me. For the next 20 kilometers or so, I will now have the wind behind me, and the wind's changing to a south wind in the evening, so it could be okay. And as I said, knowing where the wind's coming from, and I could have given up easily, but because I knew that the wind's going to change and it would at least be coming diagonally from behind. What I could have now is 20-30 kilometers of paddling just on the right hand side, but that's better than doing an average of 2 kilometers an hour like the last hour. Science of paddling against the wind. Done okay today with most of it completely against the wind, and it's easy to get into the mindset of fighting against the wind. I found that a good tactic is now, which actually worked quite well today, but not all of the time, because you have certain situations where you have to fight to stay in the right direction and stuff. But if you're normally paddling against the wind, that you just try to do your normal stroke and your normal energy that you're using, and try not to fight too hard, because you're basically using up too much energy and you're not going much faster as a result of that energy. So it's important to try and stay in that mind state. Okay, I'm just going to paddle normal and not going to get too tired too early. I think if I would have done that today, I would have given up. When I got to the point around Koblenz where the winds let up a little bit, there were gusts now and then, and it was even behind me for a while. And now I'm pretty much in a good state, but I'm going to stay in Koblenz because I am pretty tired. Tomorrow I'll have the wind behind me, and yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll get 100 done, because it would be nice to get to Rotterdam a little bit faster, which we'll see. I can see the bridges above me where Mark said I should get out. We'll see. So I have a bit of a rest day here. Sitting in my Ekla Rolly chair on the nice little beach next to the ferry. Luckily the ferry isn't going anymore. And the restaurant up on the top is closing soon, so it will be more quieter here, so I can sleep quite well. Just sleeping on the sand, because it's nice. Today was, I keep saying it, but it was awesome. I started in Koblenz, got down the big steps in front of the castle, which was really nice. Koblenz is amazing because it's there's very high hills left and right, and there's a cable car going over the river too, which is pretty cool. My lunch I had at 60 kilometers. I was invited by people at a boats house. They have a club, and they're very inclusive. They have like wheelchairs on big SUPs. They're really nice, and they invited me for a cappuccino and I lost a little bit of time there, but it wasn't lost because it was a really nice time, and I've been invited by so many people. So today started off with an amazing breakfast, but only took about 20 kilometers after I got out of Cologne. The wind started, and it was like headwind, side wind, wind from the back, but coming from going diagonally, and it was just unbelievable. 40 kilometers of all sorts of wind. So I'm pretty tired now, but I had to, I got to the point where I wanted to give up and wanted to get into a hotel. And, then a friend of mine who I met on the Ardèche, Garwin Gurney, called me and said, I'm going to come and meet you. I'm going here, and then I'll follow you on my bike and see where I can get you, because I can see you on the tracker. So this went on for about 2 hours, and as a result of him calling me, I thought, okay, I'm not going to go in a hotel, and then I got back on it and did another 15, 20, something like that. So it ended up about, I think, 67 in the end. So that was pretty cool that I got out of this defeatist thing of, I just wanted to give up, basically, for that day at least. My shoulder was hurting a lot because of the wind and having to paddle on one side. But otherwise, all good. I'm now on a camping site. Got my tarp set up because I was going to sleep outside, but it suddenly started raining, which wasn't forecast at all. But yeah, that's the way it is. So yeah, all in all, an awesome day, but very tired. Sunday, 25th of August, 5:41 a.m. Just getting ready to get up. Yesterday was warm. It was hot. It was windy. But I've kind of got my methods now. I know which side of the river to be on when the wind's going. I got stopped by the police, and they asked me why I hadn't got a life jacket. And I showed them my blow-up PFD, and they told me to stay on the side of the river, which I do anyway. But you have to. The side of the river is not always the safest place to be. After I'd actually talked to them, I saw a big ship coming, and it was moving very, very slowly. I went over to the side because it was right on the side of the river, and there were lots of other ships in the middle. My only possibility was to go into the lagoon between the breakwaters. And I just about got in time, because it was a situation where they have a big tug at the back, and then you have all these sections, and there were 6 sections, two wide and 3 long. It was incredible. I'd never seen anything that big, and it was loaded up with the steel. And the pull on the water was so much that I was pulled between the breakwaters. I was pulled about 100 meters back at about 15 to 20 kilometers an hour, and I couldn't do anything about it. And it started to pull me back out into the river, and there was hardly any water. I was dragging on the fin. And this thing was just incredible. The waves coming out of the back of it were 2 meters high. It was such a amount of power. I just about got out of the way of it, so it was quite dangerous. So getting off and getting nearer. I've got another 10 kilometers now. I've got the 800 kilometer sign, which is a good thing. And then about 3 days, including today, and then I'll be in
Rotterdam, I should hope, as long as there's not too much wind.
Sunday, 25th of August, evening in a hotel room in the last town on the Rhine in Germany. So tomorrow I'll be going into Holland. I'm really looking forward to that. Today was windy again. I've got my techniques now. It's getting better. But it's just so hard. I'm defining new types of hard on this journey, and this is one of them. It was just doing this keep on paddling mindset. You just keep paddling, and it will get better at some point, but it won't if you stop. As I'm paddling, you're getting to the point where it's you take one paddle stroke on the left and one paddle stroke on the right, and then you get big waves coming and get down on your knees. I spent more time on my knees today than I have ever on a day's paddling. Sometimes because of the wind, so you've got less wind resistance and you can kind of get through, but also because of the wind and the waves and these big ships, which I described this morning. It's ridiculous. If there's one of those coming along and then another couple of ships as well, you just have like 1.5 meter waves that are breaking over you if you don't watch out. So actually a couple of times a day I've just got out of the river when they're coming, which is not the way I normally do things, but it's getting pretty insane. So I'm being ultra careful now and really making sure that nothing's going to happen, because the amount of ships that you see on the water, I had counted, I had 13 ships in sight of me, which you can see about 1.5 kilometers along the river in each direction. I've never ever seen that many ships before, and they're just wild. They just go all over the place. They're on the left hand side coming up. They're on the right hand side coming up. They're all in the middle, overtaking each other. Sometimes you've got like 4 ships abreast. And it's crazy. So I'm just being ultra careful now, and I'm thinking about whether I actually want to go through Rotterdam at all, because there's so much going on. Maybe looking for alternatives to get to the North Sea, because Rotterdam in itself is not that important. It's actually getting to the North Sea. I will have a look at it tomorrow. But as I said, got into my hotel room here, which is pretty cool. And then it happened as it does happen, I got into the harbour and I had to get up about 2 meters, get all my stuff out of the water, up 2 meters in steep steps, and then up another 30 steps as well. So I had to take all the stuff off my board, be really careful about it. There's ships coming in, doing big waves, and you're trying to get your stuff off your board, and it's all wobbly. Got up the top, but got it done in the end, and I just about got into the hotel just as the receptionist was leaving. So I said I was going to get there in 2 hours, and actually it was almost 3 hours. So I was lucky with that too. But yeah, I'm happy and peaceful and charging my power banks and all my electronic goodies that I use, including my watch, so I can keep tracking, and looking forward to doing a big one tomorrow. I'd like to do a lot of Ks, get a good breakfast here, because I really want to get to Rotterdam or the North Sea on Tuesday, because then I have time to do some other stuff as well. So I have time to get some stuff, do different paddling and stuff. I'm in Emmerich, the last town on the Rhine before Holland. Just about to go over the border. Now I'm ready to go, and I'm gonna crack on down there because the wind's looking okay. It's not very strong, much less than yesterday. So I've got a chance to get some real big Ks done to the centre of Rotterdam, and then another 40 to the North Sea. So I'm hoping to get there tomorrow, because it's going on a bit long now. It's stretching along, and it seems endless. So we shall see today how much my strength and my resistance and my resilience will be tested. So walking to the water from the place where I stayed last evening, I was coming up to the lock on the Rhine, and a guy started talking to me. He
said he'd seen me in Koblenz, and his friend had seen me, and they saw me paddling on the Rhine, but they couldn't talk to me because I was too far away. Then I'm paddling up to this lock on the Niederrhein, and he sees me on his way back from work. And then when I was getting out of the water, he came up to me and said, "Oh, would you like to stay at my house tonight?" And I said, "Yes." I was completely naked. There was hardly any flow at all, and I had wind for 20 kilometers. Took me 5 hours to paddle the 20 kilometers. I was so happy to. It was so nice to see a friendly face, and the first person I met in Holland invited me to stay at their house. How amazing is that? And what does it say about the mindset in Holland? Absolutely amazing. Yesterday was hard again. It seems the nearer I get to Rotterdam, the slower it gets. And I knew that was coming pretty much. So I'm around about kilometer 900 or 800 and something like that. So still got over 100 to do. And I probably won't manage that today. So it looks like it's going to be Rotterdam is tomorrow, but we shall see. The quality of the recording is probably going to be a bit less now because I just dropped my earbuds in the water, like you do. Well, I only dropped one of them, but it's the one with the microphone on it. Right. I just measured the speed I'm going about 9. I've got a pace of about 9 minutes for a kilometer, so which isn't bad. It's okay. It's especially with luggage on the board. There's absolutely no flow whatsoever. When I stop on the water, I stop. So I'm having to adjust my mindset to that. It's putting me down a bit because I've got another 100. I just went past the 901 sign, and I think in the middle of Rotterdam is 1004. So we've got another 100 to do. Obviously won't be getting there today. I hope to get there tomorrow. So I was wondering why I'm feeling so tired. Doing 900 kilometers is obviously going to make you tired. But I looked at my stats and I realized I've been paddling on the right-hand side for about 160 kilometers now without a break. I'm now in a situation where there isn't much wind. So I'm paddling on the left-hand side, and I've forgot how to paddle on the left-hand side. This is very ridiculous. I can't paddle straight on the right-hand side, on the left-hand side. The other thing is, I was wondering why I was sticking my right foot in front of my left foot. I was just doing it. It was my body compensating for this 160 kilometers of paddling on the right-hand side. So the next time you go paddling, and you're having to paddle on the right-hand side for half an hour, think of me. So sitting on a nice beach after 11 kilometers, it's so difficult to keep going. We've got another 25 to go to the middle of Rotterdam. Feeling a bit weird about all the big ships here and stuff. It's, I guess because I'm just so tired and didn't sleep very well last night. And normally I'm quite happy with the waves. Even the hundreds of jet skis yesterday, I had quite a lot of fun with playing with the waves and stuff, but seemed to be a little bit down. So what do you do when you're down? You make yourself a cup of tea as an Englishman. So I'm just drinking a tea on this beach, which is quite nice. So what I'm going to try and do is do another 6, and that's an hour's paddling pretty much, and then do another 6, and then I'll be about like 23, 24 kilometers. And then from there, it's kind of 10. So that's the way I'm sort of tweaking it around in my mind. So we shall see. On a positive note, yesterday I had a coffee date when I was eating my meal in the restaurant on the campsite. This woman waved to me, and I thought I didn't know who it was. And then on the way home, they came and had said hello and said, I'm Vivian, and this is my husband Roy, and we live a little bit down the river. We just came here to have a meal by boat. And if you'd like to stay the night at our place, you can. We have a spare flat. And I said, oh, that's really nice, but I'm already booked in, so I've already put my tent up here, so I'm staying here tonight. And they said, well, come by for coffee in the morning, which was really nice. And the coffee turned into brunch, and I was actually there for about 3 hours, and they took me shopping
All the shops seem to be a long way away from the river here. In Germany, they tend to be fairly close. Here it's a bit longer. Maybe because of the high water thing here. And it's flatter, so they have everything further away from the river. So I had a really nice chat there, and they said, come and stay with your family. They're just such nice people. They're early retirees. They do all sorts of charity work, and such nice people. And it was awesome. I didn't get there. It got to about 18 and stuff, and it got the wind got up, coming diagonally from the right, so that I was paddling on the left all the time for a change, and even paddling on my knees with full power, I was going backwards while paddling. I think there was a tide, and then the waves came from the ships, and it was actually almost throwing me in with every wave. So I got into a hotel which has its own dock right outside my room. So I just in the morning I just leave my card here, go outside the door, put the stuff on my board and paddle, which is pretty cool. I've got to get the window between the fog in the morning and the wind coming up midday. So I'm just going to get up fairly early and make sure I get on the water as soon as it's light, and hope to get the I think it's 20 kilometers. Get those done before anything else happens, because I definitely want to get there now. So getting as much food in me as I can and get as much sleep and rest as I can. So hopefully, or not hopefully, Rotterdam I will see tomorrow.